So if I can request all the panelists along with Mr. Shankar and Mr. Saurabh for a picture, please, because everyone has different schedules, so we just want to get a quick photo of this moment before we move ahead. Yeah, content first. All right, thank you so much. Panelists, you can take your seat. To take us forward, I'd like to invite to deliver a keynote Mr. Saurabh Garg, who is the Secretary of MOSPI India. If you can take us forward. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, and great to be here on this session when talking of diffusion, AI diffusion. I'll just speak of one or two aspects of it because I'm sure the panelists would lend a lot more color to this topic. Just to take off where Shankar left, um, sometimes he's talking about use cases, and that's very necessary because AI is perhaps something like a solution in search of a problem. So until we don't find use cases for that, it will not be able to give the value that it potentially can, and I think that's really, really important. We're talking of AI being a possible DPI, a digital public infrastructure. And I suppose for that, some steps would be needed to ensure that it becomes trusted, interoperable, and shareable. I think those are aspects which a DPI like Aadhaar or UPI has. And I think we are still in early days, but the mechanisms for that, how we can ensure that it would be possible. And given that we talk of 4 resources as foundational AI resources, compute, data sets, talent, and models, apart from obviously the frameworks that would be necessary for this. And I mention this because I had the privilege of chairing the Democratizing AI Resources working group of the AI Summit. And various options that we discussed with other countries on how we can ensure democratization of these 4 foundational resources. Obviously, each of them would have a different mechanism. But one thing I would just go down in slightly greater details is on the data sets part, which is also something that we are doing within the Ministry of Statistics across different ministries and states. And why I'm saying data sets is also because perhaps data is also the raw material for AI models. So it's a very foundational resource in that sense. And compute is perhaps something that we can acquire, and therefore we have discussions around models, whether they need to be more efficient. They are right now extremely both compute and energy intensive. How we can make them lighter going forward. That is something which is work in progress. I think it will take some time before the small domain models come in being, which will perhaps improve diffusion. But data is something that would need to be AI ready going forward. And in AI ready, I would probably make 4 things that it needs to be. One is discoverable. How do you ensure that data is easily discoverable? And that's perhaps by ensuring that the metadata is understood by everyone, and that makes it easier for any models also to understand. Second is on the trustworthiness of the data. And that's the quality assessments that we have, whether it's trustworthy and it's credible, and that would determine its use. The third is in its interoperability, whether 2 sets of data sets, how interoperable there are, what are the kind of unique identifiers it has to be able to identify, what is it, how to link different data sets. And the fourth is its usability across systems. And that would be dependent on the standardization and the classifications that we use, which are internationally similar, so that different conclusions don't come from the same data set. And obviously the focus would have to be on access and dissemination, so that it's available for use while preserving the privacy of the data, the safeguards that would need to be built. And why I'm saying about data is because this would be also where a lot of the local contexts, linguistic contexts, cultural contexts will come in, and that will come in from the data sets there are. We talk of ensuring that it is locally relevant, the inferences and the solutions, and I suppose the data would determine its local relevance and ensure that it's useful at different levels. So I'll stop here, apart from the fact saying that for democratizing AI resources, the working group discussed with the others, and a kind of a platform has been suggested going forward, which has been named as Maitri. Maitri in Hindi means friendship, for those who are not aware, and it's an acronym for multi-stakeholder AI for a resilient and I'm forgetting what's the T for now that, sorry? Trustworthy. So, and infrastructure. So that's the acronym that we hope to be able to. But what the concept is that on a modular level, on a voluntary basis level, on a non-commitment level, how we can develop on the foundational AI resources of availability of compute, data sets, models, and talent. And I think the way we are able to develop this and move towards a DPI for AI resources, I'm sure diffusion would become all the more easier. So thank you for this opportunity, and thank you, and look forward to a great panel.
Thank you everyone, and we'll carry on. We don't have enough panels in which all of us are women, so 3 cheers for that. Don't look at each other. You guys had a great contribution. Yeah. So, couple of weeks back, some of us got together and we said, invention has happened in West. Impact has to happen at each one of us. What's the gap between invention and impact? And that's where we came out and thought about, we thought about adoption, and then we said, isn't it diffusion? And why did we pick diffusion? We actually read a book. We read a book by Jeffrey Ding. He's a professor in, it's in DC. Why am I forgetting the name of the institute? It's DC, Georgetown, sorry, Georgetown in DC. And we read about AI diffusion, and that GPT, the general purpose technology like electricity, it diffused into the society over several decades. It was created in Europe, but actually diffused in US quite a lot. US captured on it. And also chemical engineering, which Shankar talked about, that the chemical engineering creation, if you remember chemistry, Bohr model, all those were Germans. But actually it's US who capitalized on that. AI is like that. Invention happened in the West. We all know that. But it's the global South is going to have use cases who are going to diffuse it into sectors, and the horizontal enablers have to happen across these sectors for us to benefit, for us to have more economic benefit out of AI. So that's when all of us said that yes, we will do 100 diffusion pathways to by 2030. And one of the partner in crime was Kizome. She's here with us. And Kizo, my first question is to you. That that tell us about how you think, because Kenya comes in. You are based in Italy, and we did a tripartite with Kenya, Italy, and India. How do you think 100 pathways to 2030 pan out for you, and what does it mean for you? How do you think it will happen? And your mic is there.
Absolutely. Shalini, how long do I have to answer this question?
Yeah.
Short version, long
Short.
version, short version? Okay.
As long as people are okay with stories, you can carry on.
Well, I mean, as Saurabh ji, the chair of the working group for democratization of AI, spoke about, there are some fundamental resources or inputs AI need in order for it to actually work in a way that can help a common citizen or a small business owner. And some of those foundations that he spoke about are AI-ready data, compute, and those were the things that I, in my role at the United Nations Development Program, working in Africa, in parts of Latin America, in Asia, discovered that there is a constraint on access to some of these foundational resources. And so this G7 AI hub was created to address that, that constraint by, one, unlocking additional resources from, of course, the friendly G7 countries that wanted to focus on parts of Africa, but also, as we do that, to think about what is the business case for data centers, for GPUs on the continent. How do you break data silos, even though the global south is so rich in data, as well as how do you orchestrate talent, especially since we saw that much of, let's say Microsoft's or big tech's talent pool on the continent of Africa and in other parts of the world were actually coming from the global south countries. And over the last 1 year or so, I've seen this tremendous momentum of many of the African people who worked in big tech or large companies moving back to the continent because they actually don't want the continent to be left behind. They want to be co-architects of the future, this fundamental shift that that humanity is going through. And this is where, when we talk about 100 AI diffusion pathways, it is about co-architecting pathways where we look at how do we bring not just language data, but voice adoption into solutions that a smallholder farmer can use, that a women entrepreneur can use, and not just as pilots, but to think about it from a infrastructure perspective, a digital public infrastructure perspective, where we can scale to millions of farmers, go across national boundaries and be able to look across borders, either as digital public goods or as expansion of, private sector innovations or public-private partnerships. So as Shankar said, diffusion pathways could be many, and it's for the world to figure out. And I'm very much part of the group, the early group that's been trying to think about this and figuring it out for the last couple months, along with our partners at XStep and many other partners.
Thank you, Kizo. I'll come to you, Janet. You lead global development for AI across multiple geographies, but most of them are stuck in pilots, yeah, right? It doesn't. How does AI become production scale? And do you think it's funding that they lack only, or are there more diffusion pathways that we can create so that actually AI pilot moves to population scale?
Hello. Hi. Well, maybe I would first start by saying the problem of pilotitis is actually one that sort of predates AI, and we have many technologies that are enormously beneficial for humanity that I think are currently still stuck in not having diffused. But when I think about the positive examples, the places where I think as a global community we've had tremendous scaled impact, right? Having or reducing child mortality by half since 2000, 170 million people out of extreme poverty. The common threads are often that we've managed to figure out how to get both governments and markets to really focus and work for the most vulnerable populations. And so, you know, whether it's vaccines that we're talking about or instant payment systems, often it is really just ensuring that government is there at the design phase, at the table, in the driver's seat, not brought in after the pilot results come in. It is very much focused on making sure that we make it easier for local innovators to be able to enter markets. So whether that's you can aggregate low margin demand, you can streamline market entry, but really making it easy to lower the cost to serve for the most kind of vulnerable people at the edge. And then it is very much also building institutional capacity and making sure that, you know, it's not, there's playbooks and training and all of that, but really shared infrastructure that allow sort of all boats to rise, and making sure that that infrastructure is trustworthy, is inclusive, sort of creates, I think, a really positive feedback loop, because I loved what Nanda Nilekani expressed, which is that we you know, really rely on institutions for trust, not on algorithms. And I think one of the ways that institutions become trustworthy is by being inclusive and making sure that they actually serve the people that otherwise would be last to benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a key, that how do you trust the institutions? And AI output will, you know, suppose it's coming out of a AI advisory application. Do you trust that? Or do you trust the institution which is giving in a physical? Or will the institution adopt this AI advisory so that, you know, there's more trust on the advice itself being given? That's a quite hybrid and risky manner, and institutions have to understand AI and adopt and first trust the AI output before they say that this is ours. I think that part is key on AI adoption. Bia, tell us about Brazil, that, you know, a very different perspective. Just let us first let us understand that how is the AI adoption in that region, and are you also stuck in this pilot to production, and is there a gap, and how do you see that being bridged?
Yeah, perfect. So I think there are many different ways and perspectives to think about AI. In the Brazilian government, we chose to establish a vision for one government for each person. So that means we're going like fully on the personalization, and even like in the agentic state vision, right? So for that, we need to be thinking about some shared infrastructure and shared capabilities. So what we did was, starting with the data, we have a project now to not just catalog, but also prepare the data sets for training. We are also building some shared platforms for personalization and to understand citizens' characteristics. So it's within our state-owned enterprises. We're making them we have 2 large IT state-owned enterprises, and we're making them collaborate on a shared platform in which we have some canonical data sets about citizens, and every ministry contributes with different characteristics, and we're creating different labels for every citizen. And then one different way in which we're trying to break the data silos, which of course is a very big issue, is to think about the data ecosystems. So we came up with this concept, and it doesn't mean that we're doing data lakes. It means that we're thinking about interoperability from a thematic perspective. So one example is the early childhood ecosystem, data ecosystem. So we know that a lot of policies related to early childhood, they have different data requirements, and they need to use similar registries. So we created this ecosystem. We brought together 5 ministries: Ministry of Health, Education, Social Development, Management, and Human Rights. And we cataloged the policies and what kind of data would be needed. And then we started creating the standards for that specific ecosystem. So we prioritize early childhood and environmental and land ecosystems. Environmental, land, and climate. It's in the same group. So we are starting with that, and it seems to be an interesting approach. It seems to be working. The other thing is coming back to the DPI discussion. It is very helpful for us to have the digital ID and authentication to implement this vision. So what we're doing now is we started, well, a lot of people in the government want to do Gen AI, right? And because I think it's the easiest and maybe most famous type of AI implementation. So a lot of government entities and ministries wanted to do their own chatbots. So it was being spread all over. So what we did was also to try to centralize that capability. And we started with informational chats. So what kind of policies or information would be helpful. Now we are just starting the transactional part of the chatbots. So the idea is that a citizen will be able to actually complete a service request or get their service done through the chat. And that's only possible because we have the gov.br authentication. So we know that the person is actually the right person. And then the third step, which we still haven't entered, but that's the vision, is the agentic state, right? So to build the agent specific for that person, and that will only be able to happen once we have the data platform infrastructure. So that's more or less how we're thinking about the problem.
Okay. And thanks for bringing DPI into the picture, because my next question is on that. Nandan announced yesterday 100 pathways to 2030, because it comes from a lot of experience on DPI. And Kizo, my next question is to you, that you were also in the DPI journey working with India. Do you think in AI there are rails, like, DPI lays down rails, roads, which then other countries can take? Do you think in AI, how do use cases cross borders? How do use cases, what are the pathways? What are the playbooks that different countries can benefit from? How do you think that can happen?
Shalini, great question, and I'm assuming this room is fully aware of or is a user of digital public infrastructure. Raise your hands if you're not.
No.
Oh my God, one or two people. It's probably one of the reasons why I don't. Okay, we're not going to get into that right now.
You use UPI, right? You use DigiLocker. You don't use DigiLocker, but you DigiYatra? No? Okay. I think you should.
But you use UPI. Okay, so he's a DPI user, and that's the beauty of digital public infrastructure. You actually want to be invisible. And one of the sort of design, one of the ambitions that we have as part of the AI diffusion pathways is that we actually don't want AI to be this noisy, chaotic technology. We want it to be so invisible because it's actually part of your life, part of not just our life, because obviously for us it's very convenient. We're English speakers, and so we are at this summit. But for a smallholder farmer, for a small micro entrepreneur business, a woman who's crossing borders between Guinea and Sierra Leone, for example. So to go back to your question, Shalini, one, as Bia was already starting to say, as she's seeing in Brazil, and as certainly we're seeing in many parts of the world, including in India, when you have data that's already interoperable, and public rails such as identity, payments, data exchange, then the power of AI is much more easier to bring to that same service that you wanted to reach out, that's now an AI chatbot to a farmer on those rails. So that's fantastic. But then we're also seeing an emergence of additional rails. For those of you who are from India, you are probably have heard of someone using Bhashini, which is built on AI for Bharat and sort of the Indic language stack. So that is definitely a public rail, and I know that in different parts of the world there are many such rails being created. And I hope that we see the emergence of rails, but also the convergence of rails, because as the French president yesterday was saying, along with Honorable Prime Minister Modi, that it's not that we need to do more, it's that we need to do better together. So this is where the public rails really need to come together. And then I want to recognize Selina from Zindi here from Africa. She runs a public infrastructure. She runs a network of 100,000 data scientists across Africa. And that's already infrastructure. It's public interest, public value, and we're at a place where we're trying to figure out what is the business case? How do we still make them sustainable by creating those innovation layers on top of the public rails that are also emerging on AI? But it's not like you have to, compete between DPI and AI. It's like the DPI principles of interoperability, modularity, reusability, becoming a digital public good. Those still remain quite intact, and this is how we might see population scale, the scale towards impact.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Kizum, for explaining it so well. And actually, that's happening because not just the language, the multilinguality, voice AI, that is becoming a DPI because you should be able to interact in voice, and the voice stack is something which should be available for most of the people to build on top of it. Safety, the guardrails, they are DPI in itself. They can become DPI in itself. That how do you do safe conversations in agriculture? How do you do safe conversations if someone is calling up for patient care in healthcare, and can those conversations become a playbook in itself? So these are the playbooks which can get created. So thank you so much for talking about it. I'll come to you, Janet, that, the frictions which are there, right? I mean, do you think there could be certain programs or investments to be done where such frictions, because everybody is building like the full stack. Hey, I'll do language translation. Hey, I will do compute I need, data I need. So how do you remove the frictions, and do you think some programs and investments can help this?
I was thinking about this question, and the example that kind of came to mind that maybe kind of illustrates it really well. I was thinking about the MOSIP program, which is really kind of an open source platform. It's inspired by the Aadhaar program, but it is part of a larger effort with World Bank and many other partners to actually try to take that open source, vendor-free lock-in national ID system and bring it to many, many countries. And when I thought about the components of that, the programming components, I know a lot of it was around ensuring that there was sort of an open production-ready reference implementation frame. And maybe if we're going to continue on the road analogy, I was trying to think of like, what would that be? And you still, if you have a road, you still need to pick sides of the road and agree on which sides of the road everyone's going to drive in. You have to agree that a stop sign means stop and that red means stop. And so there are still, I think, a set of programmatic standards and norms that really makes it easier, not only for the adoption, but for those that have adopted to be then able to benefit from that adoption. And then, a lot of, when I think about programmatically, what has happened in something like MOSIP is, in addition to the technical implementation, there was a lot of operational support, a lot of just examples, countries visiting each other's. And, I think India has sent many delegations to many countries to help explain their story, share their pathway. There's training that needs to be had, right? You still have to get your driver's license and prove that you know how to use it. And so, I think even after building the rails, there's still plenty of program implementation work to actually really help facilitate and lubricate that adoption. And of course, financing as well, which kind of came through the World Bank program. So, it's a bit of a no sort of single bullet, even after having the rails set, there's still, I think, a lot of work to be done, program implementation and operational support.
Thank you. Bia, what's the hardest challenge? I mean, this all sounds very easy. Have diffusion pathways, go and build it. But it has to be like operational. It has to be adopted. They're people, right? The human in the loop is the most important in AI. We can never ignore that. What's the hardest challenge that you see in this?
just one.
Just one. Oh, we are lucky.
Maybe I'm going to talk about some institutional challenges and how we are thinking about those. So obviously, it's not just creating applications. It's the same old story of digital transformation, right? It's just at a different level, but you've got to change the processes, the way things work. So what we're doing, I think maybe 3 interesting things that we're trying to do. Also, I'm not trying to sell it, right? Everything that we are doing is we're testing. So let's see what works and what doesn't. But one thing that we're doing now is in the Ministry of Management, we have a Secretariat for Shared Services, and they didn't used to work with AI. So the idea is that we make it very, very simple for any ministry to use a service that is centralized in the Ministry of Management. So for example, with these chatbots that I was telling you about, we've centralized the procurement, and we chose one vendor to help us build the solutions. And each ministry was doing their own. So we said, hey, if you buy it through the centralized service, you only need, it takes just a few hours, you just need to sign a document and transfer some money digitally to the Ministry of Management, and you can use the service. So you don't have to go through any procurement. So that's one way that we're trying to overcome the problem of multiple solutions and difficult implementation. We also came up with an interesting, I think, institutional arrangement, which is when we're talking about AI, we're talking about innovation and new capabilities. So capabilities to the Ministry of Management, which means that they're building the whole process of like how you can come up with first like a policy goal, like what's the AI project is going to target, how do you experiment, they build the process for experimenting, they have analysts looking at the data and seeing if things are working. So that's something that seems to be working well, and we think it's gonna be good. The other real challenge that we have, I think, is with the vendors. And I'm using my development hat here from my previous background. I think everyone is talking about AI and how every agency and ministry needs to be doing something on AI. And obviously there are some big vendors who are saying, yeah, like you government, you don't have the capabilities, we have the capabilities, we can do it very fast, we do it at scale. And if you start making these decisions day after day, you're not going to build any capability if you just outsource it. And I use an analogy with, for example, the army. No one thinks that it's reasonable to outsource your army to a country that has a stronger army or a better army, but in terms of digital, we're doing it every day. Like for every decision, oh, this country, this company does it better, so we're just going to outsource. And there are some essential capabilities. It's not just an AI tool or something. Like we are playing with national data. We have some very strategic goals also. So I think if we don't think about building these capabilities, even if you start small and it takes a while to build the muscles, we've got to build the muscles. So we're trying to incentivize also the agencies to test and experiment and don't buy prepackaged solutions, because we've got to build our own muscles.
Yeah, I think you brought in a very valid point, which is what a lot of people are scared of is a vendor lock-in, right? And you would have seen Amul AI, which got launched by the Prime Minister, and we as the Step Foundation made it possible. And the one key thing was there that how do you keep it multi-model, like multiple models should be able to do it. Why just one? And that's been a key thing, that how do you give choice to people? How do you give, not logged into the system? Because that's where the diffusion works. Diffusion is not about like concentrated Western LLMs altogether and just deploy it. It's about actually walking the path, give choice, replaceability, have domain knowledge, have data, with you, because data is there with us in our enterprise systems, and we don't want learning from them. How can you separate that? So it's about actually, and now this know-how that we have got, we want to share with everybody, and that playbook is a diffusion pathway. That's exactly, and that gives an example for that. um, Kizum, you and me co-authored a paper which is up in Atlantic Council, and we also talk about the use case adoption framework. Would you like to, tell people about the use case adoption framework and how that can be a friction remover?
Absolutely, and I'm looking for the key author that I saw of the use case adoption framework, Tanvi Lal, director at People Plus AI at XStep Foundation. Um, so, when we were preparing for the AI Impact Summit many months ago, which feels like many years ago, we started with this idea. Saying adoption is proving to be a challenge. What are we learning from our experience? And this is where XStep looked at Mahavistar, its work with AI for Bharat, its ongoing conversations with Anthropic and other private sector companies on safety tooling. And I did the same across a number of countries. And I think together we consulted about 20 plus countries, had convenings in South Africa, to New York, to, I don't know, many, many more places along with the Gates Foundation as well. And what we learned was that the impact of what technology like artificial intelligence can do sits in sectors. So education, health, climate change, but its ability to move from pilot to scale depends on the horizontal unlocks. So this 100 diffusion, AI diffusion pathways, underpinning that is this framework that's we call the AI adoption framework, the use case adoption framework, where we see impact in sectors where you need contextual data, contextual knowledge, process, workflows, things that have to change in a Department of Education to, Department of Health and so on. But then the horizontal unlocks are the language data, compute, generally how do you make AI data AI ready? Or how do you make data interoperable, because a farmer is going to be buying things, selling things, getting public services. So we can't, we have to think about it from a user life perspective. So this is really, I think, a bit about the use case adoption framework that we've done together with countries, Gates Foundation, with XStep. And we hope that this helps us ground our 100 AI diffusion pathways, because as Shalini was saying, this is not about just going and saying, I have this solution, you adopt it, because we're not going to see that impact with that approach. We'll have to co-design some pathways. We'll have to fuse verticals and horizontals. And this is where, at least when I talk to many innovators, private sector companies in the global south, I see them saying, aha, this is how we co-architect the future. This is where, when we develop a voice optimization solution as a public good, that goes out to the world. We are builders of the future too. So this, it's just such a powerful kind of learnings that we've put together into this 100 AI diffusion pathways towards impact.
Thank you, Kizum. I'm looking at the time, and I would like to ask the audience to have like 2 questions. So please raise your hand if, I saw yours first, and okay, then yours.
Typical countries like India, which has a diversity as its core in terms of language, cultures, and literacy, different literacy levels, physical literacy, general literacy levels, as well as digital literacy levels. So, do we require to have a differentiated and varied pathways rather than one playbook and one guardrail kind of a thing, because the diversity, like Madam was telling, voice-based and all, because of the limitations of literacy, the limitations of digital literacy, both. That's what it is. To diffuse.
Would anybody like to take it? Yeah? Yeah.
Yeah, I was so distracted by the crowd that's coming in. We're getting kicked out, guys. uh, um, so I think your question was how to address diversity and diffusion.
Yeah, in terms of language, in terms of profession, in terms of literacy level, because even though they say literate, they can't read right. In India, technically they are
So,
literate.
so,
Even
I
digital literacy gaps are there.
yeah, but if you can't read, can you hear? Because
Yeah, yeah, that's what.
this is where I think voice adoption is something that is key to the inclusion agenda and the impact agenda of AI. So I would say, to answer your question, voice adoption.
Yeah. Actually, that's why AI becomes more equalizer, and it actually bridges the divide, right? So there are inequalities, and how do you bring in new language? Today, bringing a new language into a model has become fairly easy, fairly, right? So bringing a new language, which we can talk about, yeah, that's available. There is data which is logged in PDFs into various regions, and people are not knowing that. Today, that's become easier. So that's how it is a leveler.
But proof
I'll
of evidence, proof of evidence.
that's a trusted source. That's a trusted source. So I'll maybe talk to you later about what Mr. Saurabh Garg talked about, then how evidence. Yeah. One last question. Yeah. Yeah. Uh, I think you're talking about a pivotal moment, right? One, like, I'm not a fortune teller, right? But what I can do is I do understand the ecosystem about AI. I think the fact that multilinguality can be one very big change, because it draws people in. What is change about? Change is always about people. That how people are able to, when UPI was initially talked about, it was like banks said, hey, I have to change my whole system about it. The user friendliness of it, and the fact that it's so easy to deploy and by people, is what drew to it. So any AI moment which draws people in because of the interoperability, the usability, and the fact that itself will become. Has it happened? No. Can it happen? Yes. And multilinguality is one of them, but we have to see that how it pans out. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you very much. We are being kicked out of the room, and a great panel. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you everyone for joining us and sharing your thoughtful views. On behalf of India AI team, we would like to offer a souvenir with our sincere thanks. Thank you so much.